I'm Meghan, and this is Confessions of a Female Founder, a show where I chat with female entrepreneurs and friends. Let's be honest, launching a business, it can be so overwhelming. Even with the best of teams, it'll keep you up at night. Because every single decision, every micro detail, in that moment, it feels monumental.
Meghan brands herself as an entrepreneur the same way her guests do. However, there's a difference between Meghan and her guests, because looking at what Meghan's done, both in the UK and since she left the UK, it's all been because of her marrying into the royal family. Her marriage allowed her to introduce a new clothing line in a speech where she didn't hesitate to highlight the originality of her ideas.
Thank you so much for being here today. So, on my visits to SmartWorks, I said, okay, well, let's try to work with what we have and make the best of it. And then the next time I went, you'll remember this, there was a rack of about 40 or 50 lilac-colored blazers. But for most women, when you're going in there and you want to have a job interview and you want to feel your very best and you want to feel confident, you want to be wearing the pieces of clothing that make you feel that way, and not the leftovers that didn't sell from the end of the season.
Her marriage has allowed her to make a deal with Netflix and get millions of dollars for doing damage control in a series that was deceptively marketed as a documentary.
Snapchat.
Oh gosh. And then she sent me an email saying, I know you said you're single and a friend of mine asked about you and maybe you'd like to meet him. And I said, who is it? And she said, it's Prince Has. And I said, who's that?
A marriage that's paved the way for the most uninspired cooking show in history. A cooking show that has nothing to do with cooking, but everything to do with damage control. Trying to give people a new impression of Meghan, an inevitable failure. So ironically, Meghan's only able to talk about the best of teams and about every micro detail feeling monumental because of her association with Prince Harry's family, the family she can't stop criticizing. Criticisms that are so irrelevant that the only thing they expose is Meghan's entitlement.
You know, unlike what you see in the movies, there's no class on how to speak, how to cross your legs.
Nobody prepares you.
But even down to like the national anthem. No one thought to say, oh, you're American. You're not going to know that. That's me late at night Googling, what's the national, I've got to learn this. I don't want to embarrass them. I need to learn these 30 hymns for church.
Considering how traumatic all of this undoubtedly was. I mean, Googling the lyrics to a song would be tough for anybody. It's strange that Meghan holds on to the title of Duchess. It couldn't be because that title opens doors to disingenuous platforms like Spotify and Netflix and gives people the desired impression of her, could it? I'm not quite sure. I'll let you know when I find out.
And the person that I knew was perfect to talk to about this, that had to lead the season, well, she's one of my closest friends. She's the founder of the dating app Bumble.
That didn't sound like a deliberate speech error at all.
And the person that I knew.
It's funny how all celebrities, politicians and founders are Meghan's closest friends, from Serena Williams to Justin Trudeau's wife to now Whitney Herd. It totally doesn't sound like Meghan's only saying that to make people think that she's in the same league as her guests. Wait.
Not only is Whitney a wildly successful female entrepreneur, but she's the kind of friend who just always seems to know the exact right thing to say when I need perspective. And Whit is an undeniable visionary. But how you doing, beauty?
I'm just so happy to see you, and this is going to be so much fun.
Meghan couldn't have said anything more generic than this. So what is it that Whitney says that gives Meghan perspective? And what perspective is Meghan even talking about? Never mind, I guess. As long as she makes people think she's friends with every truly successful person out there, that's what counts, right? Remember when George Clooney was at Harry and Meghan's wedding?
I'm just so happy to see you, and this is going to be so much fun.
I know. And honestly, I just want the conversations to feel relaxed and easy.
Yeah.
And also thinking about how I am just in it right now. Talking to people who've also been so in it.
In case the listeners aren't aware that they should consider Meghan to be in the same league as her guests, Meghan doesn't mind spelling it out for them and letting them know who this new podcast is really about. Her in one of her many rebranding attempts. And yes, of course, she wants the conversations to be easy. We wouldn't want to do anything that's hard and actually work for our money, or make listeners think too critically about what's being said.
So I want to talk about all of that, but I think when it's friends that are on with me, that we have such a deep personal relationship and connection and love, as opposed to starting with just where it all began for you, I want to start with where we first met.
I love that. Oh, God.
Do you remember?
When I came to your house in a disco cowboy outfit?
Yes, for New Year's Eve.
It's the same pattern over and over again. Meghan wanting to mingle with celebrities, business people, and political leaders, even though they're much more established than she is.
And I was surrounded by world leaders, humanitarians, prime ministers, and I was invited to pull up a seat at the table. I think I even saved my little paper place card that said my name on it. Just proof that I was there, and proof that I belonged.
That we have such a deep personal relationship and connection and love.
Yes, because real friends always feel the need to state how deep and personal that connection is, with the disco cowboy outfit and all. It totally doesn't sound like the opposite is true.
That was the beginning, and that was even where I didn't think it was going to become a friendship that would also be in many ways the soundboard for me with work and business. And I was still in such an incubation stage, not even of a brand, but just an ideation of what it could be. And you always, think about so many times sitting there where you're like, okay, let's talk it through. Let's make a plan. What's the business plan? What do you want to do? What's your essence? No way, this could be right for you. And just helping me, whereas so many people, I think, often will make the false assumption that when someone is really successful, part of that success is because they keep it close, where really part of that success is because you share it so broadly.
Yeah, I think that's beautiful.
And so generously. No, but it's true. I'm talking about you. Like, that's how you show up. And I've loved that.
Yes, of course, Meghan's talking about Whitney. That must be why she just talked about her own incubation stage. Listening to Meghan, it's as if she's talking about a different person. What brand is she talking about? What essence? Nice, authentic word, by the way. Her podcast, Archetypes, and the so-called documentary were based on complaining about the press and Harry's family, just because she now brands herself as a champion of human rights and gender equity. Talk about self-aggrandizing and deceptive promotion, by the way, doesn't take away from that. And complaining about her past in the UK, the past that made her famous or infamous, doesn't equate to building a brand and can't be compared to people who build something from scratch. And then we got the unforgettable cooking show, where every single smile felt authentic and organic. The show that Drew Barrymore is the only person in the world who thinks is wonderful.
I've been watching your show with love, which is really, wonderful.
Nothing sounds more honest and authentic than that, especially because Drew's able to pinpoint exactly what's so wonderful about the show. Wait, of course she's successful, we must never doubt that. Everything Meghan's involved in is about her trying to brand and rebrand herself, kind of like Rachel Zegler at the moment, masked as being about the guests, the food, or whatever. There's a crucial difference between praise and flattery. Praise is largely spontaneous and associated with actual accomplishments, like saying good job or what you said about this was spot on. In that sense, praise is real. Flattery, on the other hand, is deliberate, and speakers have ulterior motives for using it. A speaker uses it when they want something from the person they're flattering. Recognition, for instance, being recognized for being in the same league as that person, even though they're not. Notice Meghan's flattery in the following.
Also, you touch on just now, having been in an abusive relationship or a toxic relationship, you look at what you've manifested now in your life with this incredible, loving, sweet as can be husband.
Crazy cowboy.
And 2 boys.
Yes.
I mean, it is no mistake that you ended up with 2 boys when so much of it for you is rewriting the history of what men and boys should be in the world, and that you are the one that is responsible for creating the next generation of really good men. You are married to one, and then you have these 2 just incredible boys.
They're so sweet.
Meghan has no way of knowing whether or not Whitney's husband and children are incredible and sweet, yet she acts like it, the epitome of flattery. In this context, sweet sounds like a deceptive euphemism for compliant or malleable, same as when Meghan claimed that she only wanted someone nice and kind.
I didn't know much about him, and so the only thing that I had asked her when she said she wanted to set us up was, I had one question. I said, well, is he nice? Because if he wasn't kind, it didn't seem like it would make sense. And so we went and...
If that was the only question Meghan had, I guess she would have been perfectly all right with her friend setting up a date with a truck driver, right? I'm totally convinced that Meghan didn't have a say in her date with someone from one of the wealthiest families in the world. This exchange is full of presuppositions about what a toxic relationship means and what supposedly constitutes good men. There are no reflections about whether or not the other party in the relationship contributed to the toxicity. Toxic, which is quite the buzzword nowadays. There's no accountability.
I mean, it is no mistake that you ended up with 2 boys.
What exactly is Meghan suggesting here? That Whitney's children were predestined to have a certain gender because of some dating app? Way to make Bumble sound divinely inspired. And what does rewriting the history of what men and boys should be mean? I guess as long as men stay within the boundaries of what Meghan euphemizes as being sweet, nice, and kind, it's okay, and if they don't, they're not sweet, nice, and kind. It's ironic how Meghan predictably uses the oversimplifying buzzword toxic, because imagine Meghan's reaction if 2 men talked about how women should be in the world. Who's really being toxic here?
They're so sweet.
But it's so interesting.
It is.
You have a family of boys. You're surrounded by this energetic circle of the opposite of toxic masculinity.
That is very true. And I will tell you, Meg, the one thing I have learned in my journey, and it's so interesting because this is exactly what we're focusing on at Bumble, is at the end of the day, none of this is really just about girls or boys versus girls. It's all about the way we love ourselves, or we don't.
Whitney shouldn't be defended because participating in this podcast, while unironically using the platitude journey and making many questionable statements, are red flags.
I had to talk about my journey, you know? And the beautiful part about it is like this whole journey, as difficult as it's been, has just brought Will and I closer in such an authentic way, you know?
However, it's interesting that she isn't on board with the gender discussion Meghan wants them to have. Meghan brought up toxic masculinity, which is a cliche that's been used so many times that it's lost all meaning, as if it ever had a meaning.
And of course, Scooter never contacted me or my team to discuss it prior to the sale. And let me just say that the definition of the toxic male privilege in our industry is people saying, but he's always been nice to me.
Meghan doesn't even define what the cliché is supposed to mean, same as she hardly ever defines what she means. To Meghan, all that matters is using whatever buzzwords that are trending at the moment, which is the epitome of unreliable messages and self-serving agendas.
And just as a sidebar, earlier this afternoon, we sat down with a few of you delegates, and it was incredibly inspiring, the resounding themes that came up about representation, about inclusion.
What kind of inclusion? What kind of representation? Meghan doesn't tell us.
You know, I'm a businesswoman. I had a really clear job to do when I took over Bud Light. What does evolve and elevate mean? It means inclusivity. It means shifting the tone. It means having a campaign that's truly inclusive, and representation is at sort of the heart of evolution.
They never tell us what the buzzwords actually mean, because then it would be obvious that the words actually mean the opposite, as inclusion and representation both imply including certain demographics by excluding other demographics. Politicians and celebrities use buzzwords to virtue signal and come across as morally superior, nothing more.
When I look back on these relationships, I'm like, oh, I must have really hated myself because I tolerated that and I put up with that.
Yeah. And look, I think you and I have really connected on that in a huge way. But I remember a quote from years ago. I can't remember who said it, but it's something to the effect of, it's not verbatim, in a world that capitalizes on your self-doubt, loving yourself is a revolutionary act.
I love that quote. It's some version of that. You're right.
Or even liking yourself is a revolutionary act.
Yes.
Actually, Meghan's the one who's capitalized and giving people the impression that she had self-doubt, making millions of dollars off of complaining about Harry's family that, unlike Meghan, hasn't shared private details.
A few days before the wedding, she was upset about something. It made me cry, and it really hurt my feelings. And I thought, in the context of everything else that was going on in those days leading to the wedding, that it didn't make sense to not be just doing what everyone else was doing, which was trying to be supportive, knowing what was going on with my dad and whatnot.
And yes, everything Meghan says and does just screams self-doubt.
It was at that moment that I realized the magnitude of my actions. At the age of 11, I had created my small level of impact.
Meghan capitalizes on giving people the impression that she's soft and sensitive whenever it's convenient, and strong and independent whenever it's convenient. Anything to avoid accountability. If anyone still has any doubt that this podcast is about Meghan, well,
I don't leave the house to go to an office. My office is here.
Right.
So oftentimes, Lily still naps. She gets picked up early and she naps, and she only has a half day in preschool.
Right.
So if she wakes up and she wants to find me, she knows where to find me. Even if my door is closed to the office, she'll be sitting there on my lap during one of these meetings with a grid of all the executives, and here we are. And I think, that could have something to do with it, but also I wouldn't have it any other way. I don't want to miss those moments. I don't want to miss pickup if I don't have to. I don't want to miss drop off. And
I don't either.
And I think what I do love the most about having young kids in this chapter while I'm building is the perspective that it brings.
Mm-hmm.
And what is it she's building? Oh yeah, that's right. I forgot. How could I? With this, Meghan portrays herself as a hard-working mom, same as in her heartwarming cooking show.
It's a real delight in being able to be a present parent. And it's a luxury sometimes because we all have to work. We all have a lot of stuff to do. But when you can take a minute to just...
Saturday morning.
Yeah.
But what exactly is Meghan's definition of hard work?
That's me late at night Googling.
Oh yeah, that's right. I don't know why I keep forgetting these things. Meghan talks about the moments she won't miss, knowing full well that it's her past in the UK, marrying into Harry's family, that gives her the opportunity to work from home and spend endless hours on futile damage control and self-promotion. Thus, her work life isn't comparable to the work life of the vast majority of women, the demographics she gets paid to say she advocates for, no matter how many times she says we in her deliberate attempts to make women identify themselves with her.
We all have to work. We all have a lot of stuff to do, but...
This is one of the definitions of an entrepreneur, a person who attempts to make a profit by starting a company or by operating alone in the business world, especially when it involves taking risks. For Meghan, there were no risks involved in starting a company, as if Harry and Meghan could ever be called a company in the first place. Because of her marriage, she had an excessive amount of money to do whatever she wanted to do. Thus, she's never operated alone, like many actual entrepreneurs. Even if one acknowledged that Meghan's an entrepreneur, she hasn't done very well, to put it mildly. The things she's done have been heavily criticized, from archetypes to the so-called documentary and cooking show. And despite all the damage control, most people still have a negative impression of her.
So how have you been able to manage the seemingly endless toxicity that comes at you?
Yes?
Yes, let's call all valid criticism toxicity. Way to never learn from your mistakes and avoid improving yourself.
Right, okay, where's the Cheerios? Well done! And then you're championing your team 10 minutes later about something that is really high value for the world, but in your own world, that's super high value, and in her world, that's super high value.
I don't think I can do this. I really don't think I can do this. You can do it, sir. You think so? Yes, sir. You taught me to be inclusive. That's right. I did, didn't I? Yes, sir. And it felt authentic and empowering, didn't it? Yes, sir. Well, thank you for empowering me. You might get a weekend off this year after all. Really, sir? Maybe.
Something that is really high value for the world.
What would that be?
It was like that. Like I curtsied as though I was like... Pleasure to meet you, Your Majesty. Like, was that okay? It was so intense.
Meghan talking about making high-value things is wishful thinking, how she wants people to perceive her, because it's like branding the room as Oscar-worthy material.
They betrayed me, they didn't keep their promise, they tricked me and I don't care anymore. Oh, hi Mark. Just a chicken. Chip, 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 chip. You know what they say, love is blind.
Please.
You're such an amazing hostess. And when you go to your home, you're just like engulfed in love and coziness and yumminess. Just carry you through and the rest writes itself.
I love that so much. I have all these notes. I haven't looked down one. I haven't looked at any of my notes. I'm sure I've missed all sorts of points, but I've just loved being able to chat because I think it's our friendship coming through, but also just who we are as moms, as women, as people who've gone through our own unique experiences, but are able to see it through a lens of how can I help other women specifically, but other people who are also on their same search for what they want to put out into the world authentically with their essence, and how you reorg yourself.
Yeah, you got to do it.
Well, at least Meghan was inclusive enough to say people. That's improvement, I guess.
How can I help other women specifically, but other people?
Meghan's authentic wish to help people couldn't seem any more selfless. Wait. This is the inevitable faux empowerment part of everything Meghan does, the part where she uses calculating groupthink-based rhetoric to try to make women think that they all believe and want the same because of their shared innate characteristics. Getting certain demographics to see themselves as members of a group and not as individuals makes it easier for celebrities and politicians to control them and avoid getting criticized by them.
What I find the most disturbing, frankly, especially as a supporter of women, is how much of the hate is women completely spewing that to other women. And I cannot make sense of that.
The reason why she acts as if she can't make sense of that is because she wants this demographic to think about themselves as group members so that they don't criticize her. This exposes the self-serving motives behind groupthink-based rhetoric. The idea that you shouldn't criticize anyone who shares your innate characteristics is absurd. But then again, she doesn't call it criticism. No, it's all hate, even when it's valid criticism.
There are a lot of women that are at the highest level, executive level, who are great champions of women, who are great philanthropists, and they are working in these spaces, and yet they're allowing this kind of behavior to run rampant. And at a certain point, they have got to put the do's behind the says and really make some changes on a systemic level.
In other words, content that Meghan approves of is great. Content that she doesn't approve of is bad. Thus, it's made clear that groupthink-based rhetoric is about controlling what other members of the group say and do, thus devaluing the independence of each individual in the very demographic that the speaker pretends to advocate for the independence of. The exact opposite of the freedom and empowerment that celebrities and politicians like Meghan pretend to advocate for.
The systemic change has to happen at the same time as the cultural change is happening, because if you're reading something terrible about a woman, why are you sharing it with your friends? Why are you choosing to put that out in the world?
Maybe because it's true. Because everything isn't simply hate. Maybe because innate characteristics don't determine whether or not you can criticize someone, no matter how much Meghan wants that to be the case so that no one criticizes her.
Authentically, you knew that there was a need.
Yeah.
And because it was so authentic to you, authentically, with their essence.
It's funny how the people who are the least authentic always have the biggest need to claim they are.
Has just brought Will and I closer in such an authentic way. You know?
It's as if they know they can't show it, so they have to say it. Which part of this podcast did you find most empowering? Let us know in the comments. I'll be back soon with another inclusive video.
Anything I learned about him and his family was what he would share with me and vice versa. So for both of us, it was just a really authentic and organic way to get to know each other.
You know what they say, love is blind.